Hello there. Today I'm showing you my latest version of a Whirlwind Lance build, which I've been running every league since 0.2, and this build is completely absurd. The whole idea is to flood the screen with whirlwinds and twisters, stack a ridiculous amount of overlapping hits, and then turn all of that into massive clear and surprisingly strong survivability. Its build is using the Deadeye, the Mirage Deadeye, and the Mirage Archer together, and the interaction between Whirlwind Lance and Twister is what makes the whole thing go. At its core, the build is using Frenzy Charge infused Barrage together with Salvo and Whirlwind Lance to fire an insane number of projectiles. Because we have a 70% chance to double the effect of Frenzy Charges, consuming 6 Frenzy Charges scales the hell out of it. Then we add all 6 Salvo seals on top of that, and the result is a huge wave of Whirlwind Lances firing out from our character all at once. But it doesn't stop there, because we also have Fork, Chain, and Dominus's Grasp slotted in to support our Whirlwind Lance. So those projectiles don't just fly out once, they keep chaining and forking across the screen, bouncing through enemies and hitting multiple targets over and over again since there's a large AoE. Each one of those projectiles gets more value because the hits just overlap on packs much more consistently. And then you get to the really stupid part. Barrage has +2 cooldown uses thanks to Uhtred's Constellation, and then we also have Olroth's Conviction to empower 2 additional skill uses. So the skill rotation is very simple. You hit Barrage and you suddenly have 3 empowered Whirlwind Lances ready to go. If we're sitting at max Frenzy Charges, max Salvo seals, and there are enough enemies around for all the extra forking and chaining to matter, a single cast of Whirlwind Lance can effectively send out around 210 projectiles and close to 1,500 total hits from a single cast, theoretically. That alone would be enough to make the build good, but the real reason it becomes insane is because of how Twister interacts with those whirlwinds. Every time a Twister from Mirage Archer or Mirage Deadeye enters a whirlwind, it creates additional Twisters based on the number of stages on that whirlwind. So in theory, if you could line up 210 Twisters to go with our 210 theoretical cap whirlwinds, the total number of Twisters that we could create would be completely absurd, into the thousands. But again, that's theoretical. Realistically, we're not firing that many Twisters or that many whirlwinds, but we don't need to. We are already producing way more than enough for everything in the game to just evaporate, and that is because Deadeye pushes the interaction even further. We have a 50% chance to double the effect of our Frenzy Charge consumption, and for that to apply to both the total number of projectiles coming from Barrage as well as our max number of whirlwind stages, and that massively boosts the Twisters that pass through them. Twisters gain 80% more damage per stage of a whirlwind that they pick up. So if a whirlwind is carrying a huge number of stages, the Twisters that pass through it become unbelievably strong. That is why this build does not just clear well, it absolutely detonates screens. My hit DPS in PoE is over 250k with an absurd number of Twisters. And that's not including some of the additional scaling that we're going to go over. But I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about Whirlwind Lance here, because the skill is doing a lot more work here than most people realize. It's not just a projectile skill that drops whirlwinds on the ground, it also provides some control because it slows enemies and it blinds them. And the blinding effect boosts our effective hit pool by 20% and brings it close to about 50k. And that matters a lot for this build because we are playing aggressively and getting right into the middle of packs. On top of that, the Twisters also blind enemies, so between Whirlwind Lance and Twister, enemies around us are very often blinded, which is a huge defensive layer and one of the reasons our effective hit pool is so high. And Whirlwind Lance also has an important collapse mechanic. When we move into the Whirlwind, it collapses and deals melee damage with knockback. That melee damage can also generate rage on hit. And the knockback obviously helps control the pack. And it's not just a side effect, it hits very hard because the effect of a frenzy charge version of the Whirlwind causes the collapse to get even better. The normal maximum number of stages for a Whirlwind is 3, but the frenzy charge collapse goes one stage beyond that to 4, and each additional stage gives 196% more damage on collapse. And since we are effectively getting 3 additional stages beyond the baseline, that ends up to 588% more damage on the collapse hit. Each stage also increases the area of effect, so those collapses are not only stronger, they cover more ground too. And of course, if we get the Deadeye Ascendancy to proc a 50% increased effective frenzy charge consumption for the Whirlwinds, that's our stages go up to 7 rather than 4, so even more damage. And this is a huge part of why the build feels so explosive up close. You're not just firing projectiles and hoping that tornadoes do the work. You're diving in, collapsing these giant staged whirlwinds and knocking the enemies back on hit and just deleting the screen from point blank range while the Twisters clean up the rest. And there's another important detail here that helps explain why the build can generate so many Twisters. There is a cap on the total number of whirlwinds that can exist on the ground at once, and that's 6. But that limit only counts whirlwinds that have already stopped their trajectories and have landed. It does not count those that are still in flight. But the Twisters can interact with whirlwinds while those whirlwinds are still traveling through the air. That means if we fire several dozen whirlwinds, and they are frenzy charge empowered whirlwinds at max 4 stages, the multiple Twisters can still pick those up and interact with all of those airborne whirlwinds before they touch the ground. Meaning that the Twisters that enter the whirlwinds get all that additional damage. So we're taking advantage of all the extra stages and all the extra projectiles from the Barrage empowered Whirlwind Lance and so many Twisters traveling the screen. And that's basically the heart of the build. Now, to make it even stronger, we're using the Taming Prismatic Ring, which is new in 0.5 Return of the Ancients. And this lets our wind skills benefit from multiple elemental ground surfaces when they pick up a single ground effect. So the whirlwinds are gaining 150% of their damage as extra damage anytime it picks up a ground effect. And the Twisters are getting that bonus too. That means we're dealing damage from a ton of different sources all at once. We have the initial Whirlwind's barrage of projectile hits, the collapsing melee damage when we step into them, the Twisters that are spawned from the Deadeyes and from entering the Whirlwinds, as well as Herald of Thunder contributing on top of everything else. So the gameplay loop is very simple. You hit Barrage, you fire one empowered Whirlwind Lance. Dozens of Whirlwinds come flying out, clearing mobs. Twisters start passing through them, multiplying themselves. Everything picks up elemental ground effects. We move into the pack, collapse the Whirlwind for huge melee damage and knockback, and the whole screen just gets shredded. It looks chaotic and there's very little visual clarity, but the rotation is very smooth once you get used to it. It's very tanky and it just feels really, really good. We are sitting at around 70% evasion, but this goes even higher because we are using Constricting Command, so we have an additional bit of increased evasion when we are surrounded, or in this case, when there's at least one enemy in our surrounded area of effect. And we also have other sources of increased evasion when we are moving or consumed a frenzy charge recently. So when we're mapping, we have a 95% chance to deflect when surrounded as well, along with a decent bit of energy shield as additional buffer coupled with our runic ward, and then Ghost Dance to recharge our energy shield on top of that. We also are taking 15% of damage from mana before life, so this makes our mana pool an additional defensive layer. No, the build is not invincible. It's not, like an AFK Simulacrum Farmer or anything like that, but it is close range by nature, and sometimes things will get through that evasion, and that 5% chance to deflect will get procced, and a big enough hit will get through, and you'll get popped. But for how aggressively this build plays, it doesn't happen often. You're talking maybe 1 out of every 25, 200% delirium maps will I get killed, and 90% of those deaths are going to be from either getting stuck or just complete lack of visibility. And that aggressive playstyle is a big part of really why I enjoy it so much. You can absolutely play this more passively if you want. You can fire the whirlwinds and sit back, let the twisters do the cleanup from a safer distance. But that's not what I wanted from the build. I wanted to be in the middle of combat, pushing into the packs, collapsing the whirlwinds, and watching everything explode around me. I've been playing this skill for several leagues now, and that's really the fun, is the projectile melee hybrid of it and the way it feels chewing through maps. So that's how I built it around in this case. But the twisters just help out tremendously for bossing, as well as just cleaning up some stragglers that didn't make it into our whirlwind collapses. Gear-wise, this build is actually pretty forgiving in some slots. I'm not even using an amazing spear. It's just an unremarkable ordained spear. The scepter is the good old Sacred Flame Shrine scepter with, that additional gain as extra fire damage. Now I am running a Mage Blood as a luxury item here, but it's totally not required for the build to function. I played the build plenty without it. I only recently added this. If you do not have that item, you can just use your belt slot to get your resist, get any attributes that you need, because this build is attribute starved as it currently sits, get some life, and even get some other affixes like damage taken from mana before life to increase our effective hit pool even more, as well as some cooldown recovery. So you can absolutely make up a lot of the differences with a decent rare belt here, and Mage Blood is just a big nice to have. Onto the rest of our gear, like body armor, boots, gloves, and the second ring, you mainly just want to get as much evasion, energy shield, deflection, attributes, and resistance as possible. This build, like I said, is very stat hungry, so attributes matter more than you might expect. On the gloves, if you can get the new marksman modifiers, that's even better. Plus levels to projectile skills is huge. Projectile damage is nice. But surpassing chance to file an extra projectile is also really good here. Excuse me. But I did swap this out with some flat damage gloves just to see what the damage loss would be, and it's not remarkable. You're talking like 8 to 12% depending on the gloves, and you could probably get no change if you had triple flat damage and crit damage bonus on there. I didn't test with anything that strong, so you can certainly put this build together without these modifiers on your gloves. Now the amulet is one place where I would say you definitely want to spend some currency, because we do need quite a bit of spirit to get this up and running, and you definitely want +3 to all projectile skills. Having a absent amulet with cast on crit or cast on elemental ailment is not technically mandatory, but I highly recommend it because we are using it with Profane Ritual, which gives us a power charge and therefore 25% more critical hit chance because we have charge regulation on us. So this gets us to our crit cap. And accompanying that Profane Ritual, we have Burning Inscription. So when Profane Ritual procs, we create Ignited Ground. We didn't really care about the damage from the ground itself. We care that if the map does not naturally have useful ground effects, we can just create our own from the Burning Inscriptions. And we're also running Tornado in here, and that's 100% just because it fits the wind theme. We don't really need much else here to boost the build. Yeah, we could just get an overload of power charges, but again, that's just overkill at this point. And then also helping us with that shot ground is called shots, because we have charged mark in there along with our two snipers marks, and this creates shocked ground every time our marks are consumed. And since we're investing pretty heavily into cooldown recovery, those marks are happening a lot. So between our ignited and shocked ground, we can keep feeding our damage engine pretty consistently, and then just so many maps have shocked and ignited ground on them already. I still try to avoid chilled ground because I hate it, but yeah. And then on the Amulet, you also have to anoint Thaumaturgic Generator. And honestly, this is probably the biggest upgrade to this build that we've gotten since early access has started. And it's new in the 0.5 Return of the Ancients. Frenzy Generation has been annoying for this skill for a long time, and now it's really not. Between called shots and our chance not to remove charges from runes and new modifiers on boots, as well as runes that help us gain additional charges, our frenzy charge uptime is pretty good. We still drop low, but if we have a frenzy charge empowered barrage empowering our Whirlwind Lance, there's so many projectiles firing out that they still pretty much hit that max stage. If I can find a way to squeeze combat frenzy into the build later, I probably will, but at this point it would just be overkill. Looking at the main skill links, Whirlwind Lance is using Salvo, Fork, Chain, and Dominus's Grasp so that the projectiles keep multiplying across the screen. Honestly, I think Dominus Grasps might be a little bit overkill, but I like the way it feels when it's playing right now, so I've not really been messing with it since I settled on this setup. And then I'm using Pinpoint Critical to make sure we're getting crit capped and make sure that our critical damage bonus nodes are not going to waste. In Mirage Deadeye, we're running Twister with multi-shot, projectile acceleration, prolonged duration, which helps both the length of our twisters as well as the length of our Deadeye, and Pinpoint Critical again. And that setup is mostly about clear. It helps the twisters spread faster, travel farther, and start hitting enemies off screen. Mirage Archer is set up in a similar way, but I use Second Wind there instead of projectile acceleration. And that's mostly for bosses and bigger encounters where I want multiple Mirages helping pump out extra twisters. It's basically a big damage multiplier for the situations where you really need it. For the rest of the setup, we have Herald of Thunder, and this is doing a little bit more than just damage. We're using it to actually help with armor break, because with the right supports and the Spirit of the Wolf buff on our Rite of Passage charm, it gives us break armor on hit, and Herald of Thunder hits, so therefore we can generate those endurance charges using Herald of Thunder this way. It's not super reliable, but when it does proc, it's a huge help because we get more energy shield and more evasion from that. In Mana Remnants, which is also actually doing a lot of work, first, it helps keep our mana full so we don't have to rely on other supports like Defy to be able to keep casting. Second, because we are taking some damage is taken from mana before life, we're maintaining a healthy mana pool, which directly improves our survivability. And then we're using Cthulhu's Rejuvenation, which is a huge source of cooldown recovery. With 8 stacks, that's 80% increased cooldown recovery rate, and that's amazing for a build that relies so much on Barrage and these multiple Mirage skills, which all have pretty lengthy cooldowns. On the curse side, I'm running Blasphemy with Elemental Weakness because such a big chunk of our damage ends up being Elemental. If defenses are a problem, you can absolutely swap that for Enfeeble or Temp Chains. Temp Chains in particular would probably feel very nice here because it gives you more breathing room when you're diving into packs, because unfortunately we can't phase through mobs, so the Temp Chains will help you be able to continue moving and avoid getting stuck. There are also a couple other things that we're doing with some of our skills that just come from our weapons, and really that is just to help us get more red gems onto the build so that we can take advantage of crystallized immunities on the tree. We want that to give us immunity to ignite, which is huge for this build. We can't see the ground the vast majority of the time, and so if you're on an ignited ground map, our energy shield is pretty much almost always going to be gone, and our health will be at half. And even though you're not taking any hits because our evasion and deflection is so high, you're just constantly spamming your health flasks to try to keep up. So yeah, you really need it, otherwise you're going to get pretty frustrated because you'll be spending more time healing yourself than you will be attacking. For charms and flasks, I'm just keeping it simple with the standard defensive options of a stone charm and a thawing charm. Get yourself a solid life flask. I like this one here that gives increased recovery rate, and then I have a Lavianja's Spirit on there. That's not necessary. Any mana flask will work here. Ascendancy wise, this is a Deadeye, and the key nodes are doing a ton of work here. Called Shots is extremely important for Frenzy Charge generation through our dual Sniper's Mark setup, and of course obviously helps us automate Shot Ground in addition. And then the Mirage Deadeye, which is helping us with mapping, and that's just our extra Twister engine. Every time we attack, it spawns and begins firing tornadoes, assuming it's off cooldown, which is another reason we are investing so much into cooldown. Avidity gives us a 50% chance to gain an additional Frenzy Charge when we gain one, and when that's paired with the rune we have in our weapon, we always gain an extra Frenzy Charge. And then Thrilling Chase is what makes consuming Frenzy Charges so explosive, because the benefits of consuming them have a 50% chance to be doubled, and that's where Barrage gets so crazy. Without Frenzy Charges, Barrage gives a couple of extra shots, but with 6 Frenzy Charges like we have, that jumps big time. And if Thrilling Chase doubles the benefit, the number of projectiles becomes ridiculous before you even factor in Salvo, Fork, and Chain that we have on Whirlwind Lance. And, you know, that's the foundation of the entire projectile spam engine. As for the passive tree, we're getting most of the standard dex crit clusters. Up here we're grabbing for the Jugular and True Strike for some stats and some critical hit chance and damage bonus. Strike Through, it's probably one of the better crit nodes. Heart Stopping and Heartbreaking. Down here we're going to be grabbing up Tainted Strike, and then we also pick up this Javelin node from the Spear cluster for a little bit additional critical damage bonus, and that's essentially all the crit that we get from the tree. Being a constricting command build, we are grabbing these surrounded nodes over here for additional damage, movement speed, attack speed, and about 200% increased attack damage. Also for damage, we're getting Roland Strike for more damage with spears, and then importantly, we're getting Focused Thrust. Both of these do affect the build quite a bit. We do quite a bit of long range attacks, so we're getting that 40% increased damage, but we're getting 75% increased melee damage up close, and that's huge for when we collapse our whirlwinds. Up here we're getting just some additional evasion, movement speed, and reduced movement speed penalty while moving, and that helps us a lot with just being able to continue to drive right into packs to collapse those whirlwinds. We're grabbing additional evasion and deflection nodes from the wheel up here. Bestial Skin is a huge one, doubling the amount of evasion from our body armor. Even though we have ES on our body armor, that's still a lot of evasion. This new cluster up here is really nice. It also gives us some resistances as well as, you know, evasion and deflection, faster start to energy shield recharge. And then this new hidden node, the Hollow Keeper, is really nice because, you know, it reduces curses like temp chains and elemental weaknesses, and things like shock and chill have a lower effect on us. So this is a really nice addition. For utility, we're grabbing a Frantic Reach up here for some area attack. We're scaling quite a bit of area attack actually. Area of effect for attacks. This one down here, Authority, is really nice because it gives us 15% increased area of effect as well as 10% increased cooldown. Yeah, and speaking of cooldown, we're also grabbing these cooldown nodes here right around Distracting Presence. And with these nodes essentially, and then also the cooldown that we have on our jewels, which is, yeah, this Time Lost Emerald gives us an additional 10% thanks to the notables in this area right there, and also getting some additional crit damage bonus and some projectile speed from that, which is nice. It's not super juicy jewel here, and the upgrading the radius to medium isn't really doing much for us. But down here is our crystallized immunities. Again, like I said, this is pretty much necessary for this build, and we need the stats that path to it anyways. So on our jewels, just you want evasion, attack damage, critical hit chance, critical damage bonus. I don't have the really nice jewels that are available to players this league. Probably be something I do next, though. I have a few ideas on how to improve from here. Heart of the Well, we got cooldown recovery rate as well as skill effect duration. That helps with our mirages, and then some crit, and then extra lightning damage just to make sure that we're shocking in the event that we get, you know, like a pure fizz spear later. That'll be helpful. And then we have this Megalomaniac Diamond, which is giving us Engineered Blaze, which is close on the tree. We could probably grab it, but this one, I just like getting it on a Megalo because the points leading up to it are kind of useless. And then we get Savagery, which gives us 50% increased evasion rating when we've consumed a Frenzy Charge, which is almost always, and an additional Frenzy Charge. So we're getting a lot of additional evasion while mapping. That's not just standard tooltip in the hideout evasion rating. And then Fervor for additional Frenzy Charges and Frenzy Charge duration so that we can get up to 6 so that we're firing a ton. Yeah, like I said, again, jewels just get damage and crit stuff. Cooldown would be great too. And then we have a Prism of Belief for +3 to whirlwind skills. Typically these are super cheap, but this league, that one cost me about 50 divine. So, and this is the Thaumaturgic Generator that we've anointed onto our Amulet. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the passive tree. So yeah, that's the build. It performs incredibly well. It's been cruising through very juice content. I've easily been running 200% Delirious maps, even city maps with 8 extra random mods in party play, and it just keeps moving. I've not done much Expedition because I just find it boring. You'll find that most of my builds that I will release will probably have never touched that. I'm just generally not interested. But I have done high rune count expeditions inside my 200% Delirious maps, and the build handled them without any real issues. So I would anticipate it would probably be fine in some of that content as well. So as for where I'm going to take the build next, I think the biggest and most obvious upgrade it would be just to get a better spear. And, you know, there's definitely room for more flat damage on the weapon, get some levels of projectile skills, onslaught, and, you know, some other luxury upgrades. The jewels I could probably improve. I could also get an anoint on my helmet, or add, what is it, the Legacy of Olroth of Trample Toe, and get a little bit more AoE clear, especially given how much we're investing into AoE. That might be pretty nice. And I could see squeezing Combat Frenzy into the build somehow, perhaps by getting an Unset Ring and getting a Spirit Corruption on my Constricting Command Helmet. But, you know, those are all pretty expensive, high luxury improvements, and like I said, the build kind of cruises through everything without it, and that's just the beauty of it. This is one of those builds where a single item doesn't really make it function. Most of what I'm showing you here is not mandatory. It just keeps pushing the build higher and higher as you invest into it. You know, even before the top end gear, the core interaction is already really powerful. I think I'll probably put together a budget guide for this in the future. But yeah, so to sum it all up, the build takes Barrage, Frenzy Charges, Salvo, Fork, Chain, and Deadeye Ascendancy scaling, and turns Whirlwind Lance into just a screen-wide projectile windstorm. Those whirlwinds slow and blind enemies, so we're getting defenses. They collapse for huge melee damage and knockback, and we can generate rage with that, so that's maybe another addition I can add to the build to improve it. And the Frenzy Charge pushes all of this beyond the normal stage cap, and we just get massive collapsing damage and massive twister damage from all that. And yeah, it's fast, it's aggressive, it's much tankier than it looks, and it just covers the screen in destruction, which is the type of build that I like. So if you want a build that's active, you know, looks insane and can push heavily juice content, this one is a blast, and I can't recommend it enough. I'll leave you with this little bit of footage here, and thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions or comments or improvements, let me know. I like to share these off-meta ideas mainly so that other people can enjoy them, but also secondarily to get other people to figure out ways to improve them, because I'm not a professional gamer, kind of just a dabbling in build creation. I just find that interesting. So yeah, if you have any suggestions on how I can possibly improve it, that would be great. And yeah, thanks for coming. We'll catch you on the next one.